DKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, and KYJC, Commerce. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, could we be seeing higher prices on the cost of pre-owned cars? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to this special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Tony Joe's with me, as he is every Friday, to take your Car Corner question. The number to call is 1-877-913-5357. You can also go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Send a question in through our Q&A. And I can get you taken care of there, or just send a email to info@prudentmoney.com. We want to be there to help you and give you some guidance if you need it. So go to the website at prudentmoney.com and check out the resources there. 1-877-913-5357. I just got to thinking about something, Tony Joe. You got to be loving this weather.
Thank you. Yes, I do love this weather compared to what we've been through. So, you know,
you came in here. You're a little bit more feisty.
Yeah, I'm not dragging in here, asking for water.
Yeah, water, and then you.
Well, I asked for beer, but you don't have any, so water.
Okay, so
of course I'm kidding. Everybody knows that. But you know, here I want to point out something, Bob, if you don't mind. Just let me take a minute. At the beginning, at the opening, you said pre-owned cars. Now, that's a term that has grown in the last 20 years or so, or 15 years. Pre-owned cars. The difference is I'm old school. They're used cars. That's the way they are. And then we go on to so many other things like this, examples I can give. Like one of the things that I like to look at is upselling. Okay, you go in to buy a product and they want to upsell you. They use the word upselling. Well, that's not really a term that it's a little misleading. You know, upselling. Why don't you just say what it is? You're charging more. Okay, you're selling more. You're charging more. It's so. I don't know. The language has turned to the point where it's so apropos that it almost makes it, you get by with it. And I don't like that because let's call it for what it is. A lot of times they'll say, well, they upsold me on this. No, they ripped you off. That's what they call it. That's what they used to call it. And that's what I call it. So I'm standing my ground old school, okay?
Just say it with me. Pre-owned cars.
Pre-owned cars. Well,
just get with the program.
You know, Bob,
I know it's.
You're not wrong. They're pre-owned cars, but
it's been a long time. I know how you feel about that. And it's been a long time since you've come out of your shell on the pre-owned cars thing. Once again, I think it's the weather. It's making you a little. You got a lot more energy when you come in now. Let's talk a little bit about. Just thought it was worth mentioning because it doesn't seem to be as big of a news story quite yet. I think it will be, though. Mm-hmm. The UAW is striking against the big three automakers, and you might say, and not pay too much attention to it, but I'll tell you what's interesting to me. It seems like every time we turn around, something is pointing to an increase in future inflation. You know, the pre-owned market has come down in price, not by any stretch where it needs to be or probably should be, but it has definitely come down. It's topped and stabilized and come down, which is more than we can ask for at this point. But something like this, if it were to get into a full-blown strike, will definitely affect the pricing on pre-owned cars again. And it's all, once again, as we talk about, a supply and demand issue. And if the supply of brand new cars goes drastically down, then the price of the pre-owned market's going to go up, and it's got to be absorbed someplace.
Point in fact, yeah. If you look at what happened just during the chip shortage, with the inability to supply the market with brand new vehicles, that's what created the uptick in the used car market. That is what created the high prices and the inflation that went along with it. And I know you have this thing about being a money guy. You know, this thing about inflation is kind of a sensitive issue because so many things affect it. And some of it's not real inflation. It is just increase in price due to low supply. Well, I noticed that the UAW this time is doing something a little bit different, and I know most people, Bob, let's face it, no, who cares? UAW strike, you know. Well, okay, you don't have to care right now, but they're doing something very interesting this time, and that is they're striking all three of the big guys at once. Now, they're only starting with 10%, but the negotiations that are ongoing, what they're going to do, you watch, they're going to ramp it up. Is they don't get what they want, they're going to ramp it up, ramp it up, ramp it up. And there's going to come a point where it's really going to affect the economy, including you and I. And we may not see this. Hopefully we don't see this because they'll come to some kind of an agreement. But if it doesn't come to an agreement, they're going to ramp up 20%, 30%, 40%. Pretty soon, you're going to see enough brand new vehicles not rolling off the assembly line, and it's going to affect every facet of society almost. People don't realize that. I would like to point out, just look at the simplest thing is let's go right and focus on the factory. There's a lot of trucks that have to haul supplies into the factory, and of course, brand new cars out of the factory to different dealerships around the country. Well, when you take away all that, or a lot of that, let's say 90% of that transition no longer exists, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be suffering. All the people that make the supplies, all the people that drive the trucks and haul goods, they're going to be, out of work. It will increase inflation, as you say, without really meaning to. I mean, I can see it happening. It's going to go up. Supply will go down. Demand is still there. Price will increase. That's just how it's always going to be. You can't change that. But it affects so many different people in society. So many small businesses depend on car manufacturers. Think about, for instance, Bob, tires. Firestone, Goodyear, some of the big tire suppliers. You think about tires, well, people are still going to need tires on their car. Yes, that's true, but that's normal society. That's normal transaction in a day-to-day society where Bob may need new tires on his car, Tony doesn't. So Bob gets new tires, and then someday I'll need new tires. That's just transactions that take place on a daily basis. What about if they get close to a work stoppage and no more cars roll off the assembly line? That's 4 tires on every vehicle that's not coming off the line anymore. And believe me, that's going to put a big dent in the demand for new tires, Firestone, Goodyear, and some of the bigger ones, and they're going to start suffering financially from that.
And I can't speak to the problem, but I do know that there are some brands, and I don't know if there's enough brands to make a difference, but there are some brands that are really unable to keep brand new cars on the showroom floor, and I don't know what the reason. It's an overseas issue, but I think this really speaks to the point that interest rates don't affect this kind of inflation. And we've got a lot of little pockets of this type of inflation that could start kicking back up. We're starting to, I think the point is we're starting to see it. And the other thing too, Tony Joe, to your point, is that you could start seeing, if this thing gets ramped up within a couple of weeks, you could start seeing new cars that are already on the floor go up in price, up well over MSRP just because.
Not only that, what's it going to do to the already escalated used car market?
I don't know about the used car market, but I can tell you about the pre-owned car market.
Okay, pre-owned car market. Sorry, Bob. But, the thing is, think about it. Supply and demand again. What's going to happen? I don't agree with you in one respect. That's the used car market has not come down. I mean, it's come down a little bit, but it is nowhere near what it should be. It's still overly inflated and really, I don't know if that's what you meant or not. Did you mean it came down to normal or it just came down?
No, I think it came down.
Okay. Then I agree. Yeah, it's not.
It's stabilized, and that's what I wrote about in my piece yesterday about inflation in general. It looks like it is stabilized and starting to come down. Not anything like the government's fantasy.
I didn't get the memo. Okay. But my point is, if it did come down a little and start to stabilize, if this continues, it's just going to jack it right back up there.
Yeah, it will.
Even higher than before. So there's an awful lot to kind of concern yourself with. Not worry, but just keep an eye on it and concern yourself with what's going on, even though nobody but car people care about the UAW, the United Auto Workers. That is, the people that make cars on the assembly line, the people that work in this industry, and this has always been a mainstay in American society, and the financial markets greatly depend on the new car production. So it's a big thing in everybody's life, even though it may not be yet. And I hope, Bob, that they come to an agreement and settle this whole thing. Yeah,
it's interesting, though, that's having an effect on demand, which we don't really think about, but the interest rates on car loans are probably preventing a lot of sales that would have happened at lower rates. It's just a very interesting combination of things going on at once. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. If you want to talk to Tony Joe, 1-877-913-5357. Stick around. We'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by K. Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org.
God's care and concern for families extends even into his top 10 list, the 10 Commandments in the book of Exodus. And this week on A New Beginning, Pastor Greg Laurie helps us dig into these timeless instructions for insight on living a more rewarding life in the 21st century. Tune in for A New Beginning.
A New Beginning, weekday mornings at 7:30, here on KDKR.
In a time when we're prone to setting our minds on things of this world to solve the current crisis we're experiencing, let us trust in Jesus. He is the only one who can carry us through this confusion and unrest. We need to look more to God's Word, how it is properly taught for our comfort and hope. Please join us at 5 a.m. Saturday and 7 a.m. Sunday with Pastor Jason Wallace of Christ Presbyterian Church in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Or write Penfold Communications, P.O. Box 913, Layton, Utah 84041.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money, 1-877-913-5357. You see, Tony Joe, that's why I don't like talking to you during the break, because we start talking and we forget that we only have a few seconds.
We're always like, uh-oh, hurry up, put your headphones back on.
1-877-913-5357. Okay, so here is the real question of the day.
Okay.
As you know, when you moved from one house to another house, you're in a different environment. You drive over things that you didn't drive over things when you were at your old house. And so Sherry and I got into a couple of debates about some of the conditions of the roads and some of the things, the way that, because we just moved not too long ago. So she looks at me and she goes, "Just ask Tony Joe." She doesn't sound like that. That's just my imitation.
What do I know about roads? But go ahead.
Okay, so we have an incline for a driveway, and she parks in that incline. I said, "Are you going to put your parking brake on?" And she goes, "Oh, you don't need to put your parking brake on." I said, "Yeah, you do." And so she debated me, probably knowing she was maybe not right about this, but she debated me anyway because that's what she does. But she finally looks at me, she goes, "Call Tony Joe."
You see, she's got to keep you in your place, Bob.
Oh,
And
believe
after
me,
any argument,
I have no ego. Come on.
And after any argument, she'll say, how do you feel? And you'll say, "Pretty unappreciated." And she'll say, "Good, my job is done. I'm going shopping." Actually, Bob, is this a pretty good-size incline or moderate or what? I mean,
I would say it's a moderate incline.
you know, it's a good thing to explain, if you don't mind. Let me take a minute just to
Sure.
explain that, because it might help somebody out there listening. Okay, if you are parked on an incline and you put your car in park, there's a mechanism inside the transmission. Think of it like a big piece of metal that locks into a wheel with teeth on it. That's the best way I can paint a visual for anybody that's listening. It's like a bolt and a cog. It actually locks into a wheel that has teeth on it. So the weight of the vehicle is going to be constantly putting pressure on this mechanism. When you go out the next day to take it out of park, you really have to force or put more pressure than normal on the shift mechanism to get it out of park. You may not even realize it, but you're going to pull harder because that thing is leaning against the pressure of the weight of the vehicle. So if you eventually stretch the cables that connect your shift lever to the parking pawl, it will break and you'll have to have it replaced, and you might not be in a good situation at that point. So the best thing to do, if you're on an incline, leave it in drive, put your e-brake on first. That holds the car still. Then you can put it in park, shut it off, and go in the house. The next day, there's no pressure on that parking pawl. That's just a good tip for those out there that don't realize that most shifters are run by cables now. They're not that strong, and if you keep doing that, you're going to end up breaking it.
Let's go to a caller. Take line one. Brian in Fort Worth. Brian, welcome to the program. What's on your mind today?
Yes, thanks for taking my call, and I love your program, and
Thank you.
especially on Fridays, too, with Tony. I was listening a couple weeks ago, and he said that it's about synthetic oil, and never to use the synthetic oil in an older car that didn't have synthetic oil from the beginning. And so before I had that information, I had bought a couple gallons of synthetic oil to change oil in some of my vehicles, but now I'm not going to do that. So the question is, can I add a little synthetic oil? Like, you know, when you check your oil in your vehicle and it's down a half a quart, can I add a half a quart of synthetic on top of the regular oil?
Yes.
Or not?
No, Brian, yes, you can. I don't mean to scare you away from that. Okay, let me explain. There's fully synthetic oil. And that is made basically in a lab, and it is really a good lubricant. It really does a great job. But it does such a good job that it will actually break loose old carbon particles and things and varnish that is built up in an engine that has not had synthetic since the day it came off the showroom floor.
Right.
So here you've got the synthetic. Now, does it say full synthetic or does it say synthetic blend?
No, it's not a synthetic blend.
Okay.
It is definitely full
then,
synthetic.
Why don't you try to use it up for you get down a half a quart, you can put some in there. It's not, if it's going to mix with the synthetic blend oil or the organic oil that you already have in the engine, it will not do the damage. It will not do what I hope. You know, it's not damage. It just breaks free a lot of. It cleans very well and it lubricates very well. So to prevent that from happening, you can use it for a long time, just adding half a quart here and there. That's not going to hurt anything.
Yeah. Like
it will be
between oil
diluted.
changes.
Right, yeah. It'll be so diluted that the effects will not be insurmountable for that engine. What car do you have? I mean, just give me an idea. What kind of a car is it?
I have several. I have, let's see, my son drives a 2005 Buick LeSabre.
Good.
I'm driving a 98 Astro van for work.
Mm-hmm.
My wife drives a Town and Country minivan.
Mm-hmm. Yep, none of that is really going to be affected. Those cars are not going to be subject to any kind of severe damage in any way. If you want to use it in that manner, you can use it up that way. At least get your money out of it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, listen, thanks a lot. And again, I really enjoy the show.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate those comments, and Lord bless you.
Yes, God bless you, too.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. You know, Tony Joe.
I know Tony Joe.
Sometimes I think that people like the Friday show better than they do Monday through Thursday.
Well, more people own cars and have car problems than have money to invest with a financial planner.
Maybe so.
I would say the numbers are greatly offset in that arena.
Okay, so here's the second.
Take it from somebody who knows.
Second question. Okay, leading to the neighborhood, there's a railroad track. It's about a half a mile away. Mm-hmm. So you're going to drive over the railroad track, and this is one of those railroad tracks that if you hit that thing going pretty fast, you feel like you're catching some air. You know, you're doing a Dukes of Hazzard shot or something. And so I said, this really isn't good for the car to go over this really fast. And so, what is your advice?
And Sherry said, I don't care.
Anyway, so.
Okay, are these railroad tracks parallel or perpendicular to the road, or are they at an angle? Do they go?
They go straight across.
Okay, well, that's better than at an angle. A lot of people don't realize.
I get that.
At an angle, you hit one tire and then the other one, and that can knock things out of alignment. All I can tell you, Bob, is go slow. I mean, I know it's hard in traffic sometimes. People want to hurry you along, so to speak, by beeping their horn. But, you know, if you've got a lower profile car and a very stiff suspension system, like some kind of a sports car, it's going to be harder on that particular automobile than it would be, say, a Cadillac SRX, you know, SUV that just seems to glide over the railroad tracks without really feeling it too much. But let's face it, some crossings like that can be so rough that any speed is hard on the car. So the rougher they are, the slower you got to go. Or otherwise, plan on spending some money for suspension parts after a while. You're going to go home every day over these things, and, you know, eventually it's up to you. Slow down or pay money.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because, and I'm just amazed as I watch people fly over that thing. I mean, they don't even think twice about it, and all I can feel is when you drive over it as the damage that I just did to the car. I mean, that kind of goes through my mind. I know it's probably not happening, but I mean, how many times? Is it just one of those things where you go over, you hit that railroad track so many times that there's just comes to the one time you hit it that it shakes something loose or damages something? Or...
Well, let me tell you about that scenario. This is why you can have two identical make and model cars. Let's just throw a number out there. Two 2010 Toyota Camrys. Exact same engine, exact same everything. Four-door sedans. One of them needs ball joints at 90,000 miles. The other one never needs ball joints in its whole life. It can go 300,000 miles, never need ball joints. Why do two identical cars, one needs ball joints and the other one doesn't? It's because of the driving pattern of the person in the vehicle. And this is a classic example of you're going to wear out things, Bob, by going over the railroad tracks. Everybody does. But some people, like you, are going to cross them every single day on your way home, and you're going to probably, knowing you, go too fast. I mean, I'm not saying anything. Just look at the party and whistle. But you're going to eventually wear out ball joints, shock absorbers, front suspension bushings, lower control arms, things like that, just out of wear and tear. Now, it's too bad, but if you want to offset the damage to the car, I can only emphasize enough to just go slower.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.